stand for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Needles, can you take roll call for the record, please?
Sure. Commissioner Bacco?
Here.
Commissioner Whitaker?
Here.
Lisa Catania? Commissioner Bellioso?
Here.
Michael Pierce?
Here.
Commissioner Rakowski?
Here.
Commissioner Neary?
Here.
And myself, Jason Bartholomew.
Thank you.
Just for the record, there is an individual I see that has set up video equipment, sir, pursuant to the request of the township. Would you please state your name, the nature of what you're doing, and where this is going to be posted?
Temple, it's called Transparent Government on Facebook and YouTube.
Okay. And just so everybody is clear that this meeting is being tape recorded and may be published pursuant to what the individual has indicated where he's going to post that. And that is pursuant to the rules and regulations that we have as a township.
I'd like to welcome the public out tonight. Brief announcement, the board met tonight in executive session to discuss personnel matters. We have a presentation tonight from AutoZone. I'm going to ask them to go first, and then after that, I'm going to take public comments. So the representative from AutoZone, would you please come up and just state your name and present? If you are allowed, you cannot use a microphone, but if you feel that you need it, then by all means, you're more welcome to use it.
Sure. You'll let me know if I need to use it. Good evening. My name is Denise Yarna. I'm here on behalf of AutoZone. And as you said, we'd like to make a presentation. As you probably know, we were at the Planning Commission meeting last week and received unanimous recommendation for preliminary and final subdivision and land development approval. I'd like to go through the plan with you tonight. You understand this is not your business meeting where you would be voting on it, but really be interested in hearing your comments and your thoughts as to the plan and as to the waivers. There are 3 waivers, and the engineer, Craig, will go through all of that with the board. So I'll do that, and then we can come back and answer any questions you have. You will get review letters. We went through all of those comments with the Planning Commission and the Planning Commission engineer, and we believe that we address them and we can address all of those comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As Denise said, my name is Greg Knoll with Meg Knoll. We're the engineers and land planners for the project. Just to orientate everybody, for the proposed project for the AutoZone, we're on Chichester Avenue and Mill Road in the northeast corner. The project proposes an access off of Mill Road, driveway entrance into here to a parking configuration with parking on the front and side of the building with a loading area. Improvements include sidewalks along both frontages. One of the things to point out that we were able to work with township engineer was there's a proposed hardscape program going down Chichester Avenue. Our plan is reflective of that and it's consistent with your program here, including a brick band along the curb and stuff like that. So we show that in that area, along with a heavy landscaping package down along with trees and so forth along there. It's a nice landscaping along that area. Our stormwater management program. This parcel here is a point of clarification. It's actually a long extended property that goes back in this direction. We're developing the front, almost an acre property. There is a secondary piece available for potential development in the future. Our stormwater management basin is down towards the tail end of this property here. One of the things that the township engineer asked is that we provide a stable path leading back to that area, and we will be providing that. We'll work around in the materials we talked about at the Planning Commission meeting, so it'll lead back into that area. Otherwise, the plan's in compliance, full conformance. It's a pretty straightforward land development item. Items that I wanted to go over with you, if it's all right with you, I will address the waivers. There are 3 of them listed on the plans. The first one talks about from section 505-16B7, which talks about utilities, culverts, things of that nature within 200 feet. We were asking for relief. We have an immediate area of the project site, but some of the far off site stuff that wouldn't impact it. We would ask for relief for that. The second item is 50532A1, and that talks about sidewalks. As I referenced to you, we're showing sidewalk improvements along our frontage for this project on Mill Road and for Chichester Avenue. At this point, we're not proposing any sidewalks all the way down to A, there's nowhere to go, B, that's not part of active development. So we're doing that. And lastly would be a request to be able to do a preliminary and final. We reviewed that with the Township Engineer and the Planning Commission, did include that in our recommendation at the last meeting. So that's, I'm sorry, that's section 505.13.b. So that's a quick summary of what we're doing here. There's some stormwater improvements and stuff like that, but in general, it was a plan that we worked hard with the Township Engineer, Alex, to get through it.
I think our engineer has a
If I may, just to clarify, this is not just a land development. This is a subdivision of the entire property into 2 lots. The request is for subdivision of those 2 lots and then land development of just this initial lot. Do you have a plan of that?
I
Of
do.
the subdivision, so that everyone can see what that is? I just want to make sure that everyone understands what it is that you are would be voting on next week. The other part of this is that the applications that were submitted for preliminary land development approval. We have done a review based on the last plan for final. However, I just wanted to make it clear that the initial application to the township as well as the county was for preliminary subdivision and land development.
Two questions.
Okay.
When do the improvements to the other lot get done?
Okay, if I show you this plan, just so that there's a clarification of the area, and then I'll be able to address that, sir. The item that Lisa talked about is correct. And really what we're doing is a lot line shift. There are 2 lots on this property. I mean, the application includes 2 lots. We're shifting the lot line of 1 and leaving the remainder. So this is actually the entire length of the property. And this up here is the small areas where the auto zone is going in and so forth. The basin is back in this far area, and we would provide access back to that point for maintenance. That way, to lead sort of to your question, by putting it here, we're taking planning part of potential development on that next phase and getting that basin in place so that it stays functioning independent of the development of this property from the sense of disruption. It's not like we put one in and have to move the other. We have that along there. So that's the overall thing. Your question was, when's something else? I'm sorry, what was the question?
When are you going to do curb, sidewalk, the frontal improvements to the other lot?
That when another application comes in, so that it matches what the improvements are being done there, the applicant is actively looking for a second user and tenant. But at this point here, the road ends right here. So there's really nothing to curb or sidewalk at that point, and it leads to nothing. And so forth. So at this point, we would remain just focused on this lot and do the next improvements with the application that comes in.
And the size of that basin will cover the second lot also, right?
It doesn't cover, if it was a full development, it would not. But what we chose to do was maximize this so that you get about 40 to 50% of whatever we would have to do at a minimum would be covered by that. So we worked with the engineer to maximize this to take as much as we could.
All right, so I had some conversations, and my understanding was the catch basin was designed for future.
Correct.
Meaning, it was, I think you said it, it was maximized
Yeah.
in case the second parcel becomes fully developed, that stormwater basin will be able to handle it. No or yes?
Not if it was fully developed. I don't have all the area.
Okay.
But what we tried to do was get this, since I'm going to be just in this area, we worked to maximize the size of within the confines of that to take as much of this improvement as possible.
Okay.
And so forth. So I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to note that at this point, the the basin is merely designed for the development of Lot 1, so that if at any point in time Lot 2 is developed beyond what the basin can currently handle, it would have to be redesigned. So there would be either an additional basin or additional, somewhat of a BMP to take the impervious to bring it to compliance with 498.
I agree with you, Lisa, with a slight modification. This is actually oversized, but it's clearly nowhere near the whole thing, but it's a significant portion of it, which would make this whole process go much smoother. And it's a really good idea. Alex was very active in talking about how to do this in a sound, long-term engineering concept, not just for the application at hand. It was a very good suggestion.
Who would be responsible to maintain I'm going to call it the vacant lot for right now? The lot that's not going to be developed.
Sure.
Who's, AutoZone's would obviously take care of their parcel, correct?
Right.
And then you have the undeveloped.
This
parcel.
section here.
Right, so cutting the grass, maintaining the catch basin, is that going to be AutoZone's responsibility, or is that?
That's the applicant's action.
That would be the owner of the property.
owner?
Yeah, it may be easier, Phil, if you answer that, sir.
So, good evening, I'm Bill Roundtree. I work with Bright Partners. We're the developer of the property. Our LLC for this property is AZ Ruth Wynn. We'll own this property, and we'll continue to own it. We'll actually even do the site work ourselves. AutoZone will build their building and enter into a long-term 20-year plus lease with us, which is actually in place. But we will continue to own their lot.
Okay.
One thing I want to be clear about is, so we maximize the size of that basin to the extent we could. It could probably handle another AutoZone level development on that second lot, and maybe a little more. If that entire second lot was developed, we of course have to do some supplemental basins or subsurface.
And my understanding, there's a pipe on the backside,
Right.
where if you were to develop, it's easy to tie into, correct?
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Okay.
So we did the full development here, which made sure to work with the engineer to plan for the future development of this one in multiple different ways, so that it works seamlessly.
And there is enough room in the back end of the property in case you have to enlarge that?
What we'd end up doing, be working on the western side of the
Of the basin?
basin.
Is there a second vehicle access point to the property or just the one
Just the one.
And curbs and sidewalks would be installed on Chichester Avenue side and on the Mill Road side up until the end of the AutoZone.
That's
property.
So full sidewalk, and as I said, this area here matches your streetscape program that you're planning, so that there's continuity going forward. Hopefully this kind of sets a trend as to what it would look like out there. Pretty excited about visually how this will look.
I think there were comments from the Conservation District this week, or in the past week and a half.
That's correct.
And they'll all be,
Yes, it was. We had a little slightly different plan before. We reached out to them, talked to them. They were happy with the changes. They were actually changes that Alex had suggested about moving the basin to the other side, down further, and they were very happy to hear that today. So my feedback to them was very positive.
Any other commissioners have any comments? If I may, since we have our citizens here tonight, I'd like to see if there's any comments from them as well. And if you could address them, I'd appreciate it. I don't know if you could maybe turn to you a little bit. I apologize to the audience for not being able to fully see it. So, are there any questions from the audience regarding the AutoZone project at all?
I just have a question.
Just for the record, Pam, can you just come up and state your name and address?
I'm Pam Andrian, 2403 Main Street Road, and I'm with the Planning Commission. And what we had discussed was that they would maximize it so that when they went the basin, so that when they went to do it, they might only have to close it down for a minimum amount of time. to extend it or expand it or whatever they had to do, and not close it for like 8, 9 months getting all the work done. So that was like, it would only take a month or so to do the work to get the job done, right?
So actually what happened was Alex corrected that issue. The basin was on the other side of the proposed right-of-way. Alex suggested us moving it. When we did that, then it never goes offline. So that basin, and then we maximized the size of it, so there was no reason to change that. But I'm sorry, Lisa, did you want to add? So it's actually even better than when we first met. The second time that we presented, we improved on the situation, which was great.
Okay.
Thank you, Pam. Are there any other questions from the audience? If there's no other questions, I'm gonna say for the record, there's only one question tonight about the AutoZone development from our citizens.
I have one other item that isn't noted, wasn't noted as part of the presentation. As you are aware, a while, probably 10 years ago, we had requested an area for future dedication if at any point in time the township would want to extend Mill Road. We had at one point looked at a driveway from the high school that would tie into Mill Road, and as well go the other direction to a cul-de-sac at Deer Crossing. For the record, that is not proposed under this or in the near future, but just for the possibility of having that occur, because we are having some issues with access to Deer Crossing, or from Deer Crossing onto Chichester Avenue, and emergency access from that development as well. They have provided that in this development as part of the subdivision, so that would be a condition of the approval, just as we did with the IBEW.
But that, what you just shared us is for that side. How would you connect it from the street side?
We haven't gotten to that point yet. That would be something with the fire company. The fire company actually owns the property from where Mr. Newell had said it's the end of the roadway. Yeah.
That road would eliminate their parking lot.
Right.
So the request is for a waiver from the sidewalk, correct?
It's the sidewalk for the remaining, the back half of the property, not for the AutoZone, but the remaining half.
So the request is not to escrow the money for future development, it's for a waiver from putting it in, correct?
That's correct.
At this time.
At this time.
At this point.
One other thing, I'm sorry, Lisa, you want to say something? I was going to bring up something.
The subdivision land development ordinance requires that the sidewalk, that the road be widened to 17 foot from the center line, that there be additional right-of-way if necessary, and there be sidewalk and curb placed as part of the subdivision. So they're asking for that portion not to be completed until such time as the land development's done on lot 2.
One other item that I did want to share is part of a public improvement. As part of, we were doing the sidewalks along the frontage of our property, replacing the curb in that area, doing new ADA handicap ramps in this corner. PennDOT has come back and asked us to do 2 other corners. So the southeast corner and the northwest corner. And so we will go in and upgrade those to meet the current standards.
You know roughly how many employees you're expecting to have?
So we'll have anywhere from 8 to 15 employees. They run on shifts, so there'd be 3 to 5 per shift.
Are you looking to hire any new employees to work there, or
They'll all be new hires, they'll all be local hires.
the local hires? Okay, great. That's
It
good
should
to
be.
know.
Store manager and everyone else.
So, okay, you have any questions? If there's no other questions, if you'd like to close?
Yes, thank you for your excellent questions. We wanted to ask because the timing of these various meetings, and I know that this is not a business meeting for a decision, but The applicant will actually be closing on the property on Monday. And so while I know you're not going to vote this evening, although if you did, that'd be wonderful, is there any way to just get at least a comfort level as to where the board is on the project and on proceeding with the preliminary final?
I don't know if they're going to give you that indication at this point in time.
So can I just ask, are there any concerns? Or
There have been no concerns that have been raised at this point.
Is there anything, any other further comments that anyone has with regard to?
I thought you made a very well presentation tonight.
We very much appreciate that. Thank you. And then I also noticed this is listed on the agenda in a couple other places, and I didn't know if you wanted us to remain for those discussions.
Typically, it's listed on my agenda also. Typically, when I get to my part, I just say that we have covered it already. Yeah, we won't be discussing it any further. But as our solicitor said, we can't make any public commitments tonight. So,
Understood. And I wasn't
and I
asking
just
for
need
that.
that. I believe that was made clear. Was made clear at our last month's meeting about that we couldn't commit until our vote.
Right, and we understand that.
Okay.
We were just looking to see if there was anything that was really outstanding of concerns that we could make appropriate decisions. And then this will be on your next business meeting?
Next Thursday night.
For decision.
Right, there'll be the vote. Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'd like to